All right. And we are live with Jacob. Jacob, great to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Great
How
to
are you
be here,
doing?
Ludo. I'm good.
All
How are
right.
you?
Very good. Very good. Where are you dialing in from?
I'm in San Diego in North Park area.
Okay, great. And I'm just realizing that I'm saying dialing in as in, we're like 30 years ago and you're using a modem of sorts.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we
I don't
used to
know.
do
I don't
that.
know what the right term is for the modern days of streaming on the internet. You're not dialing in from anywhere, but anyways. So this is going to be a really exciting conversation. I've been thinking about it quite a bit, mainly because we actually had a few chats, you and I, regarding your startup and what you're doing in the AI space, and I think we share the excitement around what AI can do for the future of humanity. No less than that. And then, like what, 15 minutes ago, big news dropped.
Huge
Sam
news.
Altman was kicked out of OpenAI, and so we'll talk about that, what that means. But you really, I mean, you have a story that's really incredible, and there's so many layers to that story that I really can't wait to get into it with you. Before we get started, if you're watching us, if you're listening to us, you're probably either on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. We're streaming live on those three platforms. If you have any questions, type it in the chat on any of those three platforms. We're going to see it here. Uh, any question for Jacob regarding his journey, what he's learned, what he's going to do next? Any question for me regarding Nucamp? Please go ahead, feel free. And with that, let's actually get started. Jacob, do you mind introducing you to the audience?
Absolutely. So I did Nucamp's backend engineering bootcamp. Before I took that course, I was working in an account management role for a software company, actually in the e-learning space. But I've done really, my career started as a corporate lawyer. So it's been a crazy journey to go from corporate law and then kind of startups and software and tech,
That's right.
really
I
ever
saw
since.
that. So let's actually talk about that. Let's go back. Let's rewind. Let's talk about your education. Were you born and raised in England?
I
Is that
was actually in
yeah,
a town called Derby.
Derby? And so tell us about let's start. I guess what we call college here. What did you study? Did you actually study law at the time? And yeah, how did you get into becoming a corporate lawyer in the first place? I guess.
So I didn't study law. I studied a business management degree at Durham University.
Yeah.
Um, and then actually during my time on that degree, I did like an introduction to business law module. It was like
Mhm.
one of my training programs. I had a really good teacher who absolutely won't be watching now, but Gavin de Northwood, a long time ago. He was a really inspiring teacher. Actually, he made it super engaging, but it was all about legal cases in the business world.
Mhm.
So cases about incorporation, how the idea of a company being incorporated or an LLC and having some protection was even invented in the first place. So really, what's interesting about law is like it goes back to entrepreneurship, like the very early days,
Yeah.
historical days of what entrepreneurship and corporate ventures were, and some of the law like in the legislation that kind of protected those things and how that developed. So I was just really fascinated with that, and I had a bit of a knack for it, and I did really well. And then coming out of that, because I did well in my degree, I got a scholarship to study law. So
I see. So what was it at the time that you thought to yourself, well, maybe I don't want to manage, corporate law for a startup. I actually want to create my own startup. Was it in your mind at the time?
so I was never a corporate lawyer for a startup. Actually,
Okay.
I just was a corporate lawyer, and then I met these really cool founders that were Forbes 30 under 30. They started a
Yeah.
fintech, Veronique, Matty, and Tom. They'd raised some money and they wanted to scale from Series A to Series B.
Mm.
And so I just qualified as a lawyer. So I've been doing it for 2 years. And you can't, no company is hiring an in-house lawyer without 5 years plus of experience. It
Yeah.
just doesn't happen. So they couldn't hire me as a lawyer, but we got on really well. And they kind of created for me, which was business analyst.
Oh,
Super
that's how you got into the
ambiguous.
business analyst position.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Which was
Yeah,
really
so you
just
were.
generalist at a startup.
That's right. So you had the scholarship with EY then at the time,
Yes.
and then spent 2 years over there, EY, and then Flux. When you were an analyst at Flux, was you really working with the co-founders?
Exactly.
Oh,
And
that's
I
brilliant.
met them through EY had like a pro bono legal advisory program where they help startups, free legal advice.
Gotcha.
That's how
Yeah.
I met Flux, those founders.
Oh, this is cool. So tell us about, yeah, I mean, well, let's, yeah, so I put as a question, I'm trying to think about it. We're going to get on that path with you. I want to tell the full story. So how did you get into tech? But let's talk about the intermediate steps instead of just giving out the answer. So you spent a year with Flux, apparently. What did you learn? What did that teach you? And how did that uh, enable you to do what comes next, which I'm looking at right now? So what did you do after that, and how did you end up there?
So at Flux, like what was really great for me was it was my first. So corporate law and law generally is a pretty pretty dated industry in terms of using technology. I think legal tech has done a lot to help with driving change, but it's been really a laggard, like an industry laggard in terms of tech having a change there. And so for Flux Systems, like moving to that company, I think the 13th employee, so very early on. And I was with primarily engineers, the data science team, but really like the engineering and the data teams were much larger than the sales. When I joined, two salespeople. There was one person who was the head of sales, and there was another person who was kind of like head of account management, managing the accounts that we'd win. So really, I supported the head of sales and the COO with a ton of like operational marketing stuff as well. But I'll give you just one example story that was a little funny as well. Was so one of the biggest retailers that we won for Fluxus technology was KFC.
Oh yeah.
And so it was big times bigger than any of Flux customers up until that point. So there's a lot of stores for their digital receipt technology and digital loyalty technology to be deployed in. And we had this marketing campaign of running around the city of, well, 3 cities, but for me, running around London with a great big KFC bucket, basically offering £100 worth of KFC as a prize for installing Flux into their like Monzo banking application. You could kind of enable it as a plugin. It wasn't like its own app.
Tell me there's a YouTube video of you doing that.
There actually is. Yeah.
I'm tempted to go look for it, but maybe I won't. I don't know. You tell me. So there's a video of you in London, like running around with a big bucket of actual chicken, right?
Yes.
KFC chicken. That's brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, the golden bucket campaign, it was called.
Golden bucket campaign.
So.
All right. If we get a break, I may actually look for it. So that's when you kind of started to evolve from law to marketing to kind of salesy. Because you didn't go straight into tech, right? You really then went into sales first. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And at some point, I think there's a ton of questions from the folks. Maybe we're gonna take one up. Yeah, actually, let's do that so that people don't have to wait.
Okay.
We'll go back to you, getting into sales first, but then let's take Corey's question here. What was the job placement services like at the end of your development bootcamp? Is the career placement service built out in the US yet, or primarily UK and Europe? So go for it. Did you use our career services?
Actually, on this one, it's not super applicable to me, just because I was already working for a software company, just in a sales role, and I didn't use because I was already employed. I didn't use the services to like secure my latest opportunity, which is also for a software company. But what what it did help with, we can get into that as well. But what the coding bootcamp helped with specifically was give me the skills to be able to build and develop some of the engineering skills, which has now allowed me to transition from like a pure sales role for a software company to now being a blend of both. So now being sales account engineer and having some engineering
Yeah.
responsibilities too. So.
Yeah, I know this role. Back in my Microsoft days, we were calling them sales engineers. Kind of really those two terms combined together. Like you're dangerous enough to understand engineering and have a conversation with the CTO and talk shop, but you're still very much a salesperson. Having a quota and driving revenue for the company.
Correct.
Corey, just to answer the question, all job placement services are mainly US, not UK or Europe. I mean, you may get confused because of Jacob's accent, I guess. But really, you were in San Diego in the US while doing the bootcamp, and our services really are primarily for US students. You benefit from the coaching if you're outside of the US, but most of the job postings that you're going to see in our Discord are going to be US based. And let's actually share a little bit of your, I would say, super rich story and outcome after the coding bootcamp. Very much you're doing two things, right? You are a sales engineer for a company, but then you're moonlighting as well, having created your own startup in the AI space. So let's actually talk about that. Let's talk about. We've touched on the sales engineering role a little bit. Tell the audience what you're doing with this startup. What's the name of the startup and what is it about, and what you're doing there?
Okay. So what's funny is that the startup was really just a software engineering portfolio project to begin with. And the startup is called Sensei. The company itself is Sensei Group. And really what we're trying to do is innovate in the corporate training space, which my old company, Magnify, they have an e-learning system. So they already have a learning and a corporate training system as their primary product. And so we're looking
I'm trying to find your website. Hold on. Where is your
salessensei.com.
Oh, that's right. Okay, hold on. There we go. There you go. I'm going to share my screen at the same time.
Sure.
Now I'll paste the. There we go. So
there
it
we
is.
Go. Yes.
So what is the company doing?
So what we're trying to do specifically is it's corporate training, but we're focused on training sales reps. Obviously, from my sales experience and background, this really is trying to allow people to learn, so basically be trained like sales training, but have the problem I found when I was in sales was training is viewed as very much as like a one-off event. There's kind of, depending on the size of the company, there's some investment in sales training. It can range in terms of the amount of money. But really, sales training is, that onboarding process for a company, the first 1 to 3 months, perhaps. And then really it just stops and there's no real access to resources. And knowledge sharing within the business is pretty challenging too. So the top reps, they're busy selling. They don't have time to train and teach some of the junior reps too. So really, from that problem, this is allowing people using AI and interacting with AI to basically overcome and handle sales objections, learn the process of doing that, and then receive feedback and guidance on how they can improve their objection handling. And there's a ton of different directions and ways we can take this as well, which we're exploring. But the biggest change there's been that we've made with Sales Sensei was it was very much about, and I think this is really true of the whole AI industry right now, is ChatGPT is an incredibly powerful tool, and even the GPTs that people are creating, it's made it very accessible to create these pretty powerful tools. But I personally think that it's very good at giving you the answer. It's very good at completing, and that's not necessarily how people learn, right? you understand in education, but there's a training piece and a training element of getting users to try to actually overcome and handle objections themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then using the fact that an AI can kind of piece through a ton of information faster and give you kind of constructive feedback and advice to help improve your answers. That's kind of what we're exploring the space
That's
around.
super exciting. Yeah, I mean, that's there's a lot of monolithic, knowledge base repository, and you have to search for it. I mean, the method to retrieve knowledge, right? Do knowledge sharing in enterprises has been pretty much the same for the last 20 years, right? You have database of sorts. You do a search, but that's another area where AI is completely going to change the game and really present you with contextual data and contextual responses and coaching. So let's show the website again. I had the chance to see a demo of your product. So really going underneath the surface and seeing how you've really used the OpenAI APIs to build the product, and it was really impressive. I have to say. Can you tell us a little bit now about? And I guess we're going to start at the end, and then we'll go back in time. But your role in that company, what are you doing over there?
Yeah, absolutely. My role for Sensei is Chief Technical Officer. I have two co-founders, Andrew and Glenn. Both of them are on like the business development and sales side. My responsibilities for Sensei. So what you showed there and what I showed you, building that first of Sensei, what it is, a functional web application. I went through that whole process of building the V1. Also working on like the kind of version 2 and some of the new developments too. So I've had to kind of teach myself like agile software development and like trying to stick to prioritizing features based on like actual user and customer feedback and those types of things that were, and also I would say handling, expectations of people on the business side versus actually software development and how tricky and fiddly it can be to build software too. You could things go wrong all the time when you're building these things, and you could spend a lot of time trying to fix them instead of building new features. So that's been a real journey for me, understanding what is possible as like the only engineer. So yeah.
So I mean, people have to kind of realize what you did. You're coding 100% of that product yourself. The stack is Python, right? I remember you're using Python.
Yeah,
What's your
Flask.
backend?
Yeah, so it's Python Flask,
Yeah.
and then it's linked to like PostgreSQL database.
Yeah.
And running on Microsoft Azure, so using their cloud services.
Nice. Are you using OpenAI sorry, are you using which OpenAI services are you using? The Azure ones or the OpenAI ones?
Yeah, so I've actually deployed a model on Azure. So it's actually using Azure GPT. Which means, and the reason why is because if enterprises are to use the technology, then obviously there's a concern over OpenAI getting the data that enterprise employees are putting into that. So that level of protection was an absolute must if we are going to work with enterprise customers.
That's true. Yeah, that's really well thought out. So are you implying here, or am I understanding it correctly, that you're fine-tuning the model as well, or you're just using you're fine-tuning the models for each customer?
In the background. Yeah, something I'm working on. Yeah, but at the moment, it's
nice.
As it runs right now. It's no, but yes.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. That's definitely something that can differentiate you from what anyone else would want to do. So people have to realize, when did you start? When did you attend the boot camp? Was it like 5 years ago, or?
This is really recent.
When did you graduate?
Date, actually, but this is recently. Maybe you know better than me the back end engineering, but I think
you graduated in September.
September. Okay, yeah.
So that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
This is the crazy bit for me. You've wear so many different hats.
Yeah.
Started as a lawyer, then went into marketing a little bit, ran ran around the streets of London with a bucket of KFC chicken. That I didn't know. Uh, then moved into sales, and then and you, I think you enrolled in Nucamp in January, and then graduated in September, something like that. Maybe it was February. Uh, and now you're a co-founder and CTO of your own startup, and you're coding um, on Azure. You're deploying on Azure as well, OpenAI services and all that, which is insane,
Thank
um,
you.
and super exciting to see.
And
How many hours? Yeah,
the new company I've joined as well, Brio
yeah,
Technologies, they are a cloud consulting company. So my knowledge of Azure and my
yeah.
understanding of building with Azure was helpful in terms of securing that job. But really, we're reselling Azure, GCP, and AWS
That's right.
services.
And I'm guessing what you're doing on the side must be gold when you engage with customers, right? With in your sales, when you're wearing your sales hat, being able to kind of have that conversation with them and kind of really exactly know what they are talking about when they are talking about deployment.
It really helps. Obviously, when you're selling to technical people, like IT managers,
Yeah.
people responsible for that infrastructure in their business. I think something else I found really useful is just having like a really good understanding of like your terminal and being able to run a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of commands
Yeah.
actually has been super helpful. When I've been using a lot of Google Cloud services and using their CLI and being
Mm-hmm.
able to spin up virtual machines, and just having the knowledge of being able to do that by writing code. It's really helpful when having conversations.
That's amazing. Are you telling your customers that you're also a developer on the side and a co-founder? Do they know?
No,
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 you're not showing
no.
off.
No, absolutely not. It's more, and also is how those conversations go as well. It's a lot more like discovery and learning about them.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's not
yeah. It's
about
not about
me.
you. That's right.
So,
Yeah. Um, Oh, that's a great question that just popped up. Let me see if I missed anyone. Let's get to that one here, and then we'll get to one that we missed earlier. Why did you choose backend versus the full stack? And let me preface that when by backend here we really mean the Python curriculum. It's 16 weeks of Python fundamentals, then Python and SQL, and Flask, and then a lot of DevOps, on Azure, on Google Cloud, and everything. So it's very much a full backend suite. So why did you pick that one versus full stack?
it's a good question. I think I played around with some of the free courses on like HTML and CSS like a long time ago,
Yeah,
and never really got to the stage where I felt like I was building really functional.
hmm,
For me, I was most interested in business application, enterprise applications, building
yeah,
like tools that you could use in a business that would save you time, some automation or so, taking automation, for example, I knew that I needed to learn Python and scripting if I was going to be able to automate anything and save a
yeah,
ton of time and efficiency inside of a business. So, I'd read that backend was going to be harder in some ways,
hmm,
but I basically did like just like a Python course on Udemy, and focused around Python training before
yeah,
starting the boot camp. And I really loved the language. I think that helped
yeah. The
because
simplicity of it. Yeah,
yeah, and I've said this before as well, but from corporate legal training, the conciseness of legal
mhm,
terminology, the accuracy and precision, and how words change their meaning in a sentence, and how you have to
mm,
get them right.
yeah.
Otherwise, the contract is void, and in the same way, the software program won't run. So I found with
Oh,
Python,
that's interesting. So, do you think you were better equipped to find bugs, for example, like syntax bugs? You
yeah, because
were
I've had
you
to
paying
read
way more
thousands of
attention to the syntax?
documents. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've had to, that I've had, I had a boss when I was at EY. I won't mention his name, but he would, his entire management style was, you've got to read the document 7 times before you send it over to me. From cover to cover, you read that.
yeah,
I don't want it to come to me with errors or
yeah.
mistakes. And if there are errors and mistakes, I'm going to say, have you read it 7 times? That's what all would say.
Probably
um,
infuriating as well.
which when it's like
Yeah,
10 p.m. at night, that's very
Yeah.
frustrating. But yeah, so it definitely helped with debugging and trying to write like precise syntax and ensuring that it's correct before you're running stuff. Yeah. So
And so most of your time right now for the startup is really in the back end. I've seen the demo. So you have some front end. Of course, you have a front end as well. Do you feel like you're missing something in that space? Do you feel like, geez, I wish I knew a little bit more of JavaScript or things like that? Like how
yeah,
are you handling that?
no, definitely. There's no doubt about it. That's
Yeah.
like putting the front end together for Sensei and like hacking bits and bobs together using
Yeah.
HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Really is not fit for purpose for like the UI I want to build
Yeah.
versus the UI I have built. There definitely are some limitations there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm part of an engineering community in San Diego called SDX.
Yeah.
And there's some really talented engineers in there, and I've seen some of the things they've been able to build, using React, for example, and it looks so nice, and it hasn't taken them a long time to do. So I've been upskilling on React as well. I've been learning a bit more about adding components and installing that. But yes, it has. I could definitely do better on the front end.
Yeah.
There. It does make a big difference.
That makes sense. Are you thinking about, I mean, like, are you going to raise money? Are you going to hire engineers? How are you thinking about your role and your team as a CTO in the company now?
So VC is not like actually what we've been thinking about. The two guys who founded the company they built their own company over 20 years, and never took external funding. So
that's
yeah, and it's a profitable company. They have a good standard of living, good lives, objectively. So I don't see necessarily the need to kind of rush, just because the AI space obviously is lending itself to VC right now. There's a lot of interest in that space, but that's never been really like what I've been after. So we're exploring like alternative methods of funding for that too, but it's more of a slower build over time. There's only so much time. I'm working full time in my job, which is my primary focus. So really, it's a slower build over a longer period of time in a space that I think in corporate training, where I think AI is going to have a big impact. So in terms of team building, we've had conversations with agencies, with software development agencies, and the idea of me managing engineers through that process. So more of a lower cost type of thing. But really, until we have customers and we have pilots in place, to me, it's not real. I don't believe it's real, like as a company, until there's dollars like coming in. There's actually generating cash and money.
Until you have paying customers. Yeah.
We're not going to do an Uber kind of 5 years of burning VC money and then until we're profitable. So
that's the better way of doing it when you can do it, right? So that you don't give away ownership of your company and all the upside that comes along with it.
Right.
So you and I share a little bit, in many space, like the education space. You're defining your company as an education company first and foremost. Nucamp is an education company. You have a passion and you're investing in AI. I do as well. I've had my own experiment lately, releasing a course 100% produced by AI. It's an experiment, and I took on to advertise it on Reddit and share the news.
Dangerous
and I'm
place.
getting hammered. I'm getting destroyed
Oh no.
on Reddit. People hate the idea of AI in education. Well, they hate all other things as well. But one of the things I really don't like is pretty much saying, hey, education is just going to be done by AI. And, fearing, the human touch, I will say, and the relationship. And also kind of thinking that this is a cheap way of trying to accomplish something. Like if you give it to AI and, don't worry about it. What are you hearing when you're pitching your company and your product to customers? Like, are they welcoming it? Are they welcoming AI? Are they pushing back a little bit? Like, what are you seeing out there?
I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen is the AI just doing it as like being the problem. Because especially with OpenAI's large language models, incredibly powerful technology. There was a really good post from I think the CTO of Hugging Face, or founder of Hugging Face, where he spoke about 90% of companies are going to be using their open source AI models that are not as powerful as some of
Mm-hmm.
these as OpenAI's LLM, because it's expensive. It's
Yeah,
really
it's very
expensive
expensive.
to be able to generate
Yeah,
for it to do the work. It's expensive.
yeah,
And so really I see, like, at the end of the day, like, it's the AI is incredibly good at specific things, at like retrieving information, making sense of a data set that doesn't make sense to a human being. We've spent
right.
the last 10 years generating a crazy amount of data that we haven't we can't make sense of. A lot of businesses are just overwhelmed with the amount of data, and so
Yeah,
AI is going to help with making sense of some of that data. But what it isn't going to replace is like the execution and the implementation and acting upon that data. So a salesperson, there's a ton of tools around sales intelligence. I could know that the CEO who I'm selling into, for example, I could know about, like, maybe they have two daughters and they go to this school, for example.
yeah,
But like the AI is not gonna, have that conversation with the CEO and do it in a way that comes across genuine and not creepy and being like, hey, how do you know about, my daughters go to this school? Like, where did you get that information from? For
yeah,
example, think the actual implementation, the execution of acting upon the data, it's not going to replace that.
yeah.
But
No, yeah. I see
we're
what
going
you're
to have a lot
saying.
more tools in our arsenal
Yeah,
to be able to perform. We're going to be able to make sense of stuff we haven't been able to make sense of before. So really, that's where I see the opportunities.
at the same time, so the very first thing that is being deployed in the education space when you think about AI is personal tutors, right? And there's plenty of tutors on OpenAI now. There's like tutor GPTs,
Yeah,
and what's incredible about those are the simple fact that you can talk for hours with a tutor, AI tutor, never being bored, never being upset with you, never minding repeating themselves multiple times.
yeah,
There's that infinite amount of presence and attention that you get from AI, as much as you need, in a sense. That's pretty hard to replicate. Like, you cannot actually replicate that with just with human. Like a human, if I'm asking my teacher to explain to me the same concept 20 times, at some point there's going to be a no. And the answer is going to be no. The answer is going to be, I'm not going to do it
right.
again. um, and it's the ability of the AI to really just be emotionless, in a sense, and yet, because of that, being extremely patient, extremely empathetic, right? Because they're following a prompt, and they have to be empathetic no matter what. um, and so in that execution, where I'm seeing a lot of upside,
Yeah,
in the sense that they are capable of just reacting with no emotion, which means they are always going to be consistent in delivering the support that we want them to support, to deliver. Um, Another aspect we're trying, part of that project, is grading assignments. Now, that one is trickier
yeah,
because there's a notion of judgment. Um, but what we found as well is, again, if you compare the human versus the AI, the human, at some point, there's going to be a level of fatigue, and the feedback that the human may give you on the assignment could be, a 9 out of 10, great job, right? And you're happy, and the instructor is happy.
yeah,
The AI is always going to follow the same process and the same template, and the output and the analysis of the work is going to be verbose all the time and very detailed all the time. So there's a level of, again, attention and time spent and investment into each assignment and each result that's going to be different. And so that's the thing that I think we're not necessarily realizing just yet, is how much better actually AI could be over a human, not on the unit base, but in the long run, like the same effort over time.
yeah.
The AI actually will always be better ultimately after 6 months, I would say, or something like that, because there's going to be fatigue otherwise.
I can definitely see. I know, you know, when schools talk about like classroom sizes and they have,
Yeah.
one teacher to so many pupils, for example, one teacher for 20 pupils. And like, only the people who could afford to go to the best schools had like the best,
Yes.
really, like one teacher to 20 students, for example, the
Mhm.
best sort of ratio for teacher to students, but that's not accessible to everybody. And that goes down to like how much time and attention the teacher has for you as a student as well.
That's right.
And I think for, en masse, for the vast, proportion of people, it's not possible to give the level of education like to everybody. Like it's a competitive market economy. The people who pay the most get access to kind of elite education. So it definitely levels the playing field there. And I think the general standard of education will improve.
Yeah.
So I actually am excited for that.
Mhm.
But what I would just say, the one kind of like counter argument there is like, I mentioned that the teacher I had in my law class who was genuinely, I thought fantastic. And it wasn't just the objectivity. It wasn't just the facts. It was like the emotion in it. Like he got joy. Like you could see
That's
joy.
right. You're right.
How like, some of the cases. So that maybe in like, the unique, like elite kind of high level, not accessible to everybody, there's still room for those incredible teachers that inspire.
That's right. That's the
there's like an
inspiration you got
emotional
from
component.
him.
Yeah.
I agree. I see that, and at the same time, I wonder, can that be programmed into an advanced bot? But
I mean, have you seen Grok, right?
Yeah.
The X one.
I haven't tried it
because
but
I know, me neither. But I've just seen some of his responses, and it's they've put some humor in there,
Yeah.
right? So it's a little bit more emotional, perhaps, than maybe some of our OpenAIs.
Yeah, those GPTs, they don't have emotions, but they can mimic it, and they mimic it the way we tell them to do it. And I wonder if there's a magic prompt or a magic, fine tuning that's going to make a GPT very inspirational.
Yeah, great inspiring teacher prompt.
Be an inspiring teacher, and actually, you'll actually get a truly inspiring teacher. Think about that. So we're both in that AI space, and I want to get to that news now. Like it's been an hour now. It's been an hour that the world of AI got shook up. How do I say that?
Shaken up. I don't know. It's
shaken up by this big announcement. So we're going to read it together. Let me share my screen again. And by the way, everyone who's watching us right now, we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn as well. You can ask your questions to Jacob or myself. We've answered a few already. Ask about, Jacob's role as a sales engineer or as a CTO of a startup. Ask me about Nucamp if you want. Or ask or tell us what you think this all means. Like we're going to watch Leadership Transition. So if you haven't seen it, it was like an hour ago or something. The board of directors of the OpenAI has pretty much fired Sam Altman. And Sam Altman being, the face of OpenAI for the past, I say, year and a half. Like we've seen him everywhere. He launched GPT-4 Turbo, I guess, 2 weeks ago with Satya.
The Dev Day.
Dev Day. Satya from Microsoft. Was it maybe on Monday? Actually, that was this Monday, wasn't it?
It was like a week ago where Satya and Sam were talking about we've just created the best partnership in tech. And
that's right. And So that's the thing. Where is that? There we go. That's the paragraph that everyone is pointing at. A deliberative review process by the board, which concluded that he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. The board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI.
And from my experience of being a lawyer, consistently candid is a polite way of saying, not being consistently candid is a polite way of saying lying.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he lied to us.
Corporate speak.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's right. You're looking at it from the legal eye as well. And now this part is kind of buried at the end, which it's like, what did that guy do? like Greg Brockman,
Yeah.
he was the chairman of the board. I guess. So you're saying Greg actually joined a Twitter space and said that he voted in favor of keeping Sam.
So he wasn't in the space. The
Oh,
space
he
was
wasn't in the space.
no, it was led by Martin Shkreli. He just
Okay.
did like a Twitter space and had people.
Oh yeah, Martin.
in there.
Oh, the guy that's super trustworthy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's take it with a pinch of salt. He's
Yeah.
not the greatest track record, but he was saying that Greg was on the board and voted in favor of keeping Sam Altman. So I think there's some loyalty and friendship there. Disagree.
Yeah.
But
And if the chairman
the vote
votes
carried
against
3 to
the board,
5.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you think that means?
Yeah, it's so I have no idea the circumstances surrounding like why. We obviously had the corporate speak about not being consistently candid.
Yeah.
So it's kind of there's an accusation there that he was hiding something from the board. We don't know what. It may also be a corporate way of getting rid of somebody that is a completely different reason.
Yeah.
I'm not sure with these things. But I think what it means, which I guess my concern is Sam Altman. From everything I've seen him when he was, I think, one of the youngest founders in Y Combinator. I think he was 19.
Yeah,
perhaps.
and then he was the CEO of Y Combinator.
Right. So he really cares about small companies, people innovating and building incredible things from nothing. So I obviously have a soft spot for that. Anyone who's pushing for that, and I think Microsoft is so powerful. My concern is that they build an entire software ecosystem the back of this technology that doesn't really leave too much space or room for innovation and startups. So that's going to be interesting to see how aggressive they are. So
your product is based on OpenAI services. Like what I did with Eloquent JavaScript, he's 100% reliant on that. If OpenAI closes doors, there's trouble, right? Because there's nothing really equivalent, nothing as good.
Yeah.
To be honest, right? I mean, you don't top GPT-4 and GPT 3.5 or Anthropic or you name it, or Bard. They're too random, too hallucinating, not good enough to do a lot of what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Are you worried at all about, kind of a worst case scenario here?
So I read a really good article recently, and it kind of came after OpenAI Dev Day, where they spoke about wrapper companies, GPT wrapper companies.
The companies that allowed you to upload a PDF, all instant. Yeah,
exactly, and an API call to OpenAI, and that's the company. It talked about them basically not being defensible. And the article I read was don't build an AI company like everyone else. I think was the piece. And I read it, and I think from it was really interesting because it was basically building a company in the same way you would normally build a company. It doesn't replace any of that. And actually it's about the entire system and structure that you put together, which is the defensible company, right? Yeah. So you could run something through, an image model, for example, but there's also some clever stuff going on that has nothing to do with AI, right? And it's this entire system, including the user interface, that is really building this defensible company. Like the AI is a really powerful technology to integrate, and I think it's easier to integrate AI than to build like a completely AI native business at the moment. But there's you're still building a software as a service company. So that was the really good piece I read, but I don't think
this is Jack Altman. That's Sam's brother, supporting his brother, of course. Yeah. Feels like Apple firing Steve Jobs. It does, actually. It does, in a way.
Yes.
Is he going to come back? That's the question.
So Elon hasn't said anything, I'm guessing. I mean, they have history as well.
What?
Well,
huh? Did he just post that?
1 hour.
Oh no, that's not him. That's not him.
Oh yeah, it's not him. It's a fake.
That's not him. Jesus.
We got to be careful.
That's him. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love my time at OpenAI. Yeah, this is crazy. The fact that they can do that is just crazy on Twitter. Um, yeah. So I bet it's a money thing. Like what? I mean, you from a corporate legal standpoint, like and your understanding of how corporations work.
Yeah.
What will rise to the level of firing your CEO, which by all kind of KPIs or indicators, external indicators, has been fantastic so far. Like, what do you think will actually
Yeah,
force
it's
the
a really
board to
good
make
question.
such a decision?
I know it's definitely harder in England. So is the UK legal system, more
Yeah,
protections for employees, and way harder in Germany. I think it's very hard to fire somebody. In the US, it's a little bit different. Reasons why, like why to fire him, it's I don't think there's some sort of egregious breach. Like that's kind of what I'd be thinking,
yeah,
like um, has that's business critical. But I think it's more like strategic, where it's like maybe he has been hiding things around, like protecting startups or smaller companies, or
hmm.
maybe some of his friends building in the space, um, where
So
Microsoft
you
are very
think it
much
may
being
be more to
aggressive,
do
like
about
to destroy.
the values of the company, like be a good player, protect startups, and things like that.
Yeah, and also there's been a whole conversation around open source.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly where he stands on that, but I'd imagine he'd be pro. Anyone who's kind of come from that pathway would be pro open source and like building stuff for the community and making it open and accessible to everybody. Whereas I don't think Microsoft have historically been about opening everything up to let all the competitors build and let everybody. Google very much has more of a culture around let's open source everything, like Kubernetes development as an example. Open it
yeah,
up, allow people to build with this technology. We're going to the quality of the technology that we've built to be the defensible business, whereas Microsoft have definitely employed strategy, locking in their operating system with their hardware, for example,
yeah.
to
So
not
maybe something to
bundling.
do with the
I don't
partnership with
know.
Microsoft. You think? Yeah,
Perhaps. I don't know. What do
gotcha.
you think?
I'm looking at what's interesting is um, Greg Brockman continues to post on Twitter like nothing happened.
Right.
GPT-4 Vision for design feedback. I
Yeah.
don't think Greg has
Business
said
as
anything
usual.
yet, has he? Yeah,
No, he hasn't
GPT-4
commented on
Turbo.
it.
Yeah, I have no comment. Yeah,
He
no
probably
comment.
can't say anything. He get fired. He's already been asked to
Yeah, I
step
guess.
down
Yeah,
from
I
the
guess he's
board.
yeah,
Yeah.
replies nothing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, geez, this is yeah, this is crazy. It's going to be interesting to see in the next few days what transpires about it. Let's take this question. Next question from Bowen68.
Okay.
So the previous question was, why backend versus full stack? Now, a step back. Why a coding bootcamp in the first place? And let's rewind. You were first a lawyer, then a marketeer, then a salesperson. You've been around and involved with startups and entrepreneurs from the beginning. What made you really want to develop that new skill?
Good question. There was one other thing I was before, even before Sensei, and that was
Yeah.
another little in between between Flux and moving to the US. I, after working for that software company, I didn't have engineering or technical skills, but I worked with some very, smart technical people.
Mhm.
I then went to an accelerator program in Falmouth, in England, which is by the seaside. They
Nice.
had a program. Most of the program was about building technology companies in Falmouth because it's in Cornwall, which is one of the poorest parts of England. So
Mhm.
it's a very pretty place to live, but it's not particularly doesn't have a strong economy. And so the idea was that you could have digital first businesses and people basically working from anywhere for companies in Falmouth.
Yeah.
So that was the idea behind it. And as part of that, I tried to start a software company actually with an Italian guy called Gianluca. Still very close friends with him. But not both of it. Well, I was a lawyer and had some biz dev and sales experience, and he worked for like an investment bank, so he was very good with the numbers and finance guy. But we were trying to build software companies, so neither of us could
Yeah.
neither of us had engineering. So really, we were missing, and also the program, there wasn't a ton of engineers too, so we were missing the engineering piece. And so we try to fill the gap by working with an agency. There's challenges with working with agencies, not having those skills, especially when it's building MVPs and testing things.
Exactly. I mean, when it's that early, you don't have cash. Like, how are you going to do it?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a really big challenge and very frustrating because it's like we're both smart guys. It's like, but we can't, build this thing to test to try and improve a business. So we found that to be continually frustrating. And I think I took away from that like I wanted those skills to be able to at least build MVPs. That's kind of where it started. So that was a big decision for like factor for me to be thinking about the boot camp was I want to go into this. I want to come out of it, not necessarily with a software engineering job, because it's super competitive. It takes a long time. It's not just about that, but I want to come out of it with good enough skills to be able to build something that I can pitch or sell or use some of the business development skills to try and build a business or a company.
That makes a ton of sense. Wouldn't you say though that you've acquired way more skills now that you can really go beyond the MVP? Like, would you actually want to stop at the MVP, or don't you see yourself kind of owning it, like beginning to end, and actually shipping it yourself?
I think so, yeah. But it's so hard to say that when I guess the entrepreneur in me says yes, but I've never trained under somebody technical. That is always there's always that. Even if you don't need any field stuff, I've never trained under like a true CTO. I've never been an engineer for them and been in that company as it's grown and scaled. So basically, it's just a huge learning curve because it's one thing to be doing the engineering, but to actually be like the technical leader or architecting like a system. So not only is it like you're actually you can program in the language and write a software program, but you're actually thinking about, should we use this particular language, this particular system? Should we architect it in this way, and how the system all fits together? And then building a team with particular languages and skill sets to be able to make that work. I think that's a whole other challenge in and of itself that I haven't been through or experienced yet.
You'll probably enjoy, I think, as you think through staffing and bringing additional talent to the company. You'll probably enjoy having your first hire being really solid senior engineer.
Yeah.
Who's going to work for you, but you're going to work for him as well.
Right.
In a way. So that you can feel confident that, you're not making all the important decisions that, some of those are based on years of experience doing the right thing and giving you the learning path. Because you're right. There's a lot that can go wrong. At the same time, there's a lot that is fixed anyways. Like already, you've been talking about a V2. Like V1 is going to suck. V2 is going to be a bit better. Then you're going to think about V3 and all the things you could do different and better. And so it's going to be your own learning curve. And you strike me as someone that's super curious. So you're going to always learn from your own mistakes and other people that are going to help you along the way. But yeah, I hear you. I think having someone senior in the team, right, that can really avoid the most horrific mistakes. Like we were talking about Reddit a little while ago, and I think aren't you building on Firebase as well? No, you said Postgres.
You have nothing not Firebase yet.
No Firebase, right? So
no.
When you have your cloud, your database in the cloud, it's so easy to introduce a bug that's going to do an infinite loops of reads or writes. And then on Reddit, you're going to see those threads. Oh my God, I woke up this morning and I have $100,000 bill due to Google.
Oh no!
Because my code looped all night.
Yeah. Just burning compute.
And you want to avoid those things, right? You want to make sure that what you're building is kind of super safe and have the right testing in place, for example.
Yeah, we
Um,
don't got the Azure credits buffer. That's the
yeah. Okay. You have like it's gonna stop at the
on some
yeah.
alert.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good. Good. Boy, we're almost on time. 5 minutes left. People who's if you're watching us, Jacob and I, we've talked about your whole journey. I don't think we've left anything on the side. We've talked about you starting as a lawyer, getting exposed to entrepreneurs really early, um, running around London with a bucket of KFC chicken.
I can share the link after if that's
Yes, please do.
required. Okay.
Um, then getting into
Absolutely.
sales, uh, and then being so frustrated by. I mean, the main idea, I think, is you're an entrepreneur, right? And you've had multiple
Yeah.
opportunities to work with other entrepreneurs, build something yourself, and really you hit the wall wanting to build a software company and not
Yeah.
being able to produce that said software. And that was really the trigger for you to say, okay, I need to be able to do it myself. And so you got into Nucamp. And the crazy bit is you started in January of this year or February, graduated in September, and you have a working prototype, something that you're demoing to customers, running in the cloud, using AI. Um, and it actually started as it was also a project for your graduation in
Yeah.
September, which is insane. Uh, now, I think we discussed that a little bit when we did the demo, but
Yeah.
how much are you enjoying coding? Like, and how many hours straight could you code
Yeah,
without
that's a really good
sleeping or
question.
eating?
I use the Whacker time as well, so it keeps track right through VS
Yeah,
Code. I use Cursor now as well, which is good, which has kind of AI inbuilt into the editor.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I've definitely fallen in love with it. Like, there's no doubt about it. I there were times on Sensei where I'd have to look back at the stats, but you know, I can code for 6 hours in a day. I
yeah.
think so. Nothing crazier than that. Nothing like 8,
Mhm.
10, some crazy hours. But I would say my limit probably of like just actually coding
Yeah.
is about 6 hours.
What about the weekends? Will you code on the weekends as well?
Yeah, that's when I've been doing most of it because I've been working
Yeah,
full time as well. So
that's right.
most of the coding has been like weekends. And yeah, I would say maybe 30, 40 hours a week. Some of the highest times of just writing code. But it's so fascinating to me. It's not even just like in the writing code for this particular project, but just like how you can pull other people's code and stuff too, and like the
Oh
whole
yeah.
community through
Hmm.
GitHub and open source. That to me is amazing. It's like I can't believe how collaborative the community
Yeah,
is.
it's true.
Yeah.
So we have a minute and a half left, and I'd like to ask you to share some words of wisdom for the
Okay.
audience. Um, so assume I'm listening to us talking right now, and I've been, have an idea. There's a lot of students that are in that situation. Like they have an idea, they want to build something, and they don't know how to get there. You've had experience in building companies, helping structure companies, thinking about the product, building the product. What would be your advice to that person who's wondering, what should I do next?
I think my biggest advice there, and this maybe I'm speaking more as like a generational thing. Just I think like at least from my generation, it can actually be really hard to think long term, think in terms of 10-year timeframes versus
Yeah,
the next month or 6 months. I think I'm definitely guilty of it too. Like my expectations are just so massive of what I should be achieving and how fast I should be.
mm,
Um, and I think, yeah, my biggest advice is just like, if you really feel like the desire to build something, then it's like I've learned the most through just starting something,
yeah,
and then just going on that journey and being like it's moving so quickly. Every day there's, as we've
yeah,
seen with Sam Altman, there's different announcements. And I've had, my co-founders be like, oh, like GP's an enterprise version, and this kind of craziness in the space going on, like killing companies or whatever. And I'm trying to just like pull myself away from that and be like thinking in long term. Okay, we're going to build a solution in the corporate training space. It's going to be better than the current state of the art. It's going to use, AI is one of them. Try and thinking of it a little bit more from like than panicking and being like, I've got to switch to another project now. I've got to do something completely different. So I would just say
stay committed.
Shift.
Yeah. Stay committed to your long-term plan.
Yes.
And start to build towards it. Start to implement. Start to do it. I can tell from the chat here that you've been very inspiring for the audience. Tyson, who was wondering about taking the coding plunge as well. Bowen, who's been asking those questions, feeling also the pressure.
Thank you, guys.
I'm in the same boat, folks. So again, I really want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're a busy person. You have a ton on your plate. I really wish you all the best on your endeavor, your entrepreneurial spirit, and your entrepreneurial project, as well as your day-to-day job. I can't wait to see you succeeding and seeing your first customers come through. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise. I mean, it's also just the boot camp. It's been great. That was phenomenal for me. So thank you. And I'm excited to see, the AI edition of how that course might take shape for your JavaScript course too. So you're innovating and pushing in this space, and I think it's really cool for education.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Cheers,
that,
guys.
All right, take care, everyone. Thank you, Jacob. Have a great weekend and happy Thanksgiving. By the way, it's we're not gonna have a show next Friday, obviously. So happy Thanksgiving a little bit in advance.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys. See you.